So I'm returning somewhat unexpectedly to this topic and this scene because Haro, having reviewed my videos, which was very good of him, pointed out tactfully that I'd done something wrong. He didn't actually say that, but it's what it boils down to. He looked at the video and noticed that, as he said, on the second video about lighting, increasing the IBL quality didn't work because I'd lit it from the inside. So what happens when you use light from the inside? Well, things don't get lit up properly to start with because it places the light source at the world origin. So if you imagine, I'm just going to turn the HDRI effect off and disable the sunlight and turn the atmosphere off, so that gets rid of haze and fog, and set the atmosphere to fully black, and then set the sky dome to fully black and the ambient to fully black. So at this stage there is no other light sources in the scene. I'm going to create just an ordinary radial light, edit it so there's no fall off, so it's going to produce quite a lot of light. You can see using rendering scene now what's happening. I'm going to just check out of here and modify its position so it's almost at the world origin. If I did it at the world origin it might collide with the infinite plane, but essentially when you light from the inside, the light appears from the world origin and spreads outwards as it would from a radial light source. The only difference the quality makes is in the position of the changes of colour that are coming out from this point. So you do get more colours coming out at different points. So if it was only quality 16, you'd have 16 samples from the light from the HDRI image, and they would splay out from this central point. But as the quality goes up, then you get more samples and it changes the colour over those areas. However, you don't get any variation of the source of the light source. So you'll always get the same shadow regions, which in this case, if we just give it a quick render, these were the areas that I was struggling to get light into. And this dark sort of on lines down the sides of some of these rock formations which seem to struggle to light. Well, there was actually two problems, so it really didn't help. I'd got two problems to try and solve. Admittedly, I did solve them, and I considered going back and remaking the video number 2 and not going down that route and solving the problems in a different way and lighting the scene correctly. But I figured if I can make this mistake, then so can anybody else, or at least anybody else as fallible as I am. So, and I figure I know this system pretty well, so let's just look at solving the problem from this point on, and having explained how I did it wrong last time. So this is this rock formation that you can see here with this dark line down the side, and what I'm going to do is show you, by placing the light source inside that rock formation, a couple of things. The first is, now you might consider that's a bit strange. If I put the light source inside, how come it's lit up? Well, this is a similar problem to the one you encounter with reflective surfaces. Because you've got real geometry, this mesh shape generated from the height map, and bump which goes on top of that and modifies the normals of that geometry, so it can change, in the case of reflection, the angle of reflection. It also changes the direction which the virtual geometry applied by the bump faces to determine whether or not it can see a light source, which is how you get shadows and light on bump mapping. In this case, the bump's so extreme, even though the light source is inside, the normal's been twisted so far that it's actually seeing the light source. I can demonstrate that that's the case by editing the material for this lattice and getting rid of bump temporarily, and there it's gone. And now you can see the nature of the other problem. This lattice has got a tear in the side of it. There's actually a hole that's appeared, and the reason it was dark is we were seeing the dark interior of the object. This is a bug, and it's quite difficult to overcome. You can sort of smooth the terrain a bit, so we could do smoothing like so, and that reduces the size of this tear, but beyond that you can't really do very much about it. If you lower the resolution of the terrain, the tears can get massive, so you can sort of increase the resolution of the terrain, but as I've said before, if you do so, and before you're at the stage of your final render, it really slows going in and out of the terrain editor and the lab response. But see, that might have shrunk it a little bit, but not very much, not significantly. So I'll just use Ctrl Z to go back one resolution step, and I'll get rid of this light source, and we'll light this scene as possibly, you might argue, it should have been lit. We'll try and avoid using Skydome, and we'll also try and avoid using ambient. What I'll do is I'll set up the light. So I'm going to add that to the sky, so you can now see that's added to the background. We'll probably use fog and haze as we did before, might modify the settings slightly. Before turning the sun on, I'll use this control to bring some light in. And I'm doing it from the outside now, so I'll switch off light from inside and increase the effect. So that's a bit too much. Let's try 100. Still a bit too much. Let's try 60. Okay, so that's our ambient light, and I'll increase the colour saturation a bit, so it's a bit bluer. Quality setting I'll turn down for now and see if there's any shadow bands in evidence. I'll re-enable the sunlight, check out of there, and give that a quick render, see where we are. Okay, so now I want the fog and the haze, so I'll go to custom sky settings, which will switch those back on. We'll see what level they're at. Okay, that looks okay at the moment. This material is going to look a bit bland because I turned bump off, so I'll select that, modify the material, and put the bump back in. And that should have sorted the lighting out. We're still going to have that little dark tear in the side there, and any others at that level, because this is the point at which the lattice is reflected, so the bottom half's connected onto the top half. And it's rather irritating and unsettling that there's this large dark area in the scene. Although what you can do is use ambient, but that's lighting the inside of that shape, so the pattern won't necessarily line up. Could place a light source in there, but then again, because of the extreme bump, it would tend to make that light up as well. So as I say, there isn't really any easy way to get around this problem of these holes. As far as I can tell, there's no obvious shadow bands from the HDRI image running at the quality that it is, and it's only set down at 16, so that's okay. So all in all then, I think I've solved that problem. We'll just give this a quick render. It shouldn't take that long, only seconds. And that then will be the end of this tutorial. Correction, sorry about not managing to get it right first time round, but as you can see, just one setting makes all the difference, and it also allowed us the opportunity to explore this issue and demonstrate to you how the bump can let light through from the back of surfaces. So think about an infinite plane. If you've got light underneath and a bumpy surface, then light can get in through the back of the bump. Terrains that aren't set to solid, when you set a terrain to solid or a lattice to solid, what it does is it places top and bottoms on just flat surfaces where you've got any clipping. So with an ordinary terrain, even if you're using the full height map, it'll still be open at the bottom unless it's set to solid, in which case if there's light sources like HDRI images lighting your scene and it generates light sources under the ground, that light can light up through your terrain, and then it'll pollute your textures and it could make them look wrong. I mean, under certain circumstances you could use that effect to your advantage, perhaps to create a special effect, supposing you wanted one of these stones lit up for any reason. And so that's just something to be aware of. Okay, well you can see it's going to take a little while to do the anti-aliasing pass, so I'll pause the video there and we'll have a look at it when it's done. The only problem I have with this is that although it is better lit, it's not really that different from the other render that I did before. So I thought it might be nice if we just made it a little bit different, and I have remembered now, finally, why I was using light from inside. Because this shape was deliberately designed to make it awkward to light, so I was expecting to have problems. I experimented with obscure lighting, so I thought maybe we'd go back to light from inside and set things up for that sort of lighting setup. So I'll create a radial light, I'll set it to a different family group to show it's different, and remember the critical step is to make sure it's called background so it can be targeted by the HDRI, and we need to modify it so it's true ambience optimized, use gel include only itself, and turn off the diffuse and specular just in case, and go into procedural and reset it to default grey. So this is the surface that's going to be receiving the light. We can't see this in the render, but it will do so. So I'll just enlarge it so it's really big, then go back into the Skylab, make sure, critical step, that I include only the background. So It's now including the background. I don't want to include the water plane. I was excluding the water plane before so that the lights under there could get through. The light from inside, I don't need cast shadows for this because it's only lighting one surface. I don't know if that's going to be enough light. So the trick here is to disable the sun, check out of there. I can turn the atmosphere off again so that gets rid of haze and fog. If I switch now to render options, premium effects, 4 rays per pixel for review, true ambience, I've got TA scatter correction and boost light set, which is sort of as a result of me having tried this before, then forgetting to turn light from inside off, obviously. Maximum ray depth 4, it's already been set down. So if we want to see in this preview what's going on, we're on accurate rendering, and then you can see that either there's not enough light or things aren't correctly set yet. Back into the Skylab, something I often forget is to make sure I turn off true ambience optimization, and that will mean that the direct lighting now from the HDRI goes into the inside of this light source. So let's see if we've got anything there. A little bit. Okay, so back in here, I'll now increase this. I'll try doubling that value. You don't get a preview in here of true ambience, you can in the nano preview. There's a little bit more light now, which is the better. I'll try 300. Okay, that should be enough to drive this effect. So okay, though that's our ambient light. It will be quite a slow render process, this, but it should provide the best form of lighting for this convoluted shape, but possibly the expense in terms of render time is going to be sufficiently high that the difference between using this approach and using HDRI direct lighting might not be sufficient to warrant the time it takes. So we'll do that test. So I'll go to custom sky, so we've got haze and fog back, and I'll go back into the Skylab and enable the sunlight. Now, bearing in mind that we're using a premium effect already, we could use soft shadows for this sun, but it doesn't need to be set very high, so perhaps 10 at the most, because this is supposed to be quite a large structure, so you wouldn't normally see soft shadows on such a large structure. And in order to get this soft shadow effect to work, you need to remember to switch it on in premium effects. So we'll just give that a quick render, see how that looks. Okay, I'm not going to change any of the other sky settings because I want to make a comparison between the other render and see whether there's any significant improvement. I don't think it's going to solve this problem either, so that's still going to be a little black hole in the render. And considering the noisiness of the materials used, you can probably get away with a lower than full setting. So probably 64 is about as low as I would normally go. 36 is pushing it a little bit, but it would save quite a bit of render time. So let's see what we're like with render time, bearing in mind 30 seconds was on the first pass, so that's 30 minutes. And this water surface here is going to show up some noise if I'm not careful. But having said that, that has given me pause for thought. Since we're doing special effects, we go to the water surface, set the anisotropic reflection to fully black, so the specular halo is the level of blur. So we can introduce anisotropic or a blurred reflection on the material surface. Even though it's fully transparent, it will bring in some reflection as part of the effect. We've stopped it from travelling through the surface, so it's only a matter of determining what kind of specular halo value we want as to what level of blur we want with this material. Thinking I'll try a luminance value of 100, so hold the Alt key down, click on that, go to HLS. It's the luminance value that controls the level of blur, so I'll try 100 and just check that that's stayed because of Camtasia Studio. Sometimes this little menu sticks when I'm running Camtasia Studio for the recording, so I'll check out of that and then give that a render, and that's allowed us 3 effects. Depth of field for something this size wouldn't really be appropriate. If you want to know more about compositional elements, then I've got some videos on my YouTube channel that you can look at. Okay, so that's going to take about half an hour, let's say. We'll see how that looks when it's done, make a comparison with the original render from HDRI lighting, and then we'll see, forgetting, if you turn the effects on in the material, again, we've got to do blurred reflections, otherwise I'm not going to get that effect. So let's try again. Yep, so it shouldn't add too much to the render time, but we'll see. I suppose it's worth testing these things. So 24 minutes. Okay, right, I'll pause the video here. So that's the true ambience render completed, along with anisotropically blurred reflections and soft shadows. Although the soft shadows is not very significant, you'll notice there's differences. I've got the other one loaded in the background, so I'll switch to the image-based lighting version. You can see that this area here shows up a bit better. It's looking a bit green, probably because of the light coming from the underside of the HDRI is travelling through the water surface, because the water surface was excluded. And in the case of the triambient render that we've done here with the obscure lighting, we've only really got the light arriving from above. The light that would be reflected from this surface, although this is simulated by the light gathering method, because we used a high metallicity in this material. If I just bring this material up now, the high metallicity means that this diffuse colour, which is grey, will be blended into where the angle of incidence is at more or less 90 degrees. So only when the angle gets very shallow do you get much reflection. So that's going to limit the amount of light available through the triambience method to light these surfaces here. The overall lighting is comparable. I would say that image-based lighting's got the edge simply through render time, and it works very well with bump mapping. Triambience, the variable effect with bump mapping, it's not bad. I mean, it looks quite good, but I think image-based lighting just has the edge, and as I say, the render time is much better. The only thing is that this reflection obviously doesn't look as good as the reflection here. The difference is subtle, but I can certainly see the difference myself. Here it's much sharper, and there it's much softer, and it looks more like a reflection on water to me anyway. The choice though is yours. In the end, it depends on what you're prepared to commit to the render time, and what particular method you want to set your scene up with. I know that the obscure lighting method is a little bit involved. There's a lot of steps to it, and there's a lot of ways it can go wrong, but as I've demonstrated with image-based lighting, it's quite easy to do that wrong. It's just purely a matter of having that selected when you shouldn't can make all the difference. So there you go, that's the end of the video. I hope you found it interesting and that you'll go on to use these techniques in your own renders.